Mesechta Brachos Per Gimel. No, excuse me, thank you. Sorry, thank you. Oh gosh, I've been up all night. You have to, if you catch me saying things wrong, question. We had our peg for the base, which was peg for the letter base is a house. That's right. Vice, happy. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much. And yeah, so our simon for daf base of brachos is a house.
With the Kohen on his shoulders.
Right, Ani eating his dinner, his bread and salt, and Kohen on his shoulders saying Kriya Shema. You gotta remember those. Right? So you gotta get them together. There you go. So exactly. Okay. So now let's have this recorded on. Okay. So we're in business. You can start rolling. If the tape isn't rolling yet, you can keep it rolling now.
I just started it.
Okay, excellent. So, yes, we're holding this up. I'm an olive. We've been talking at quite some length about this brisa here that starts on line 10. About the three watches of the night and the Simanim. I want to tell you one more thing that I saw which I really liked before we move on. A little bit down the page. So I saw the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai is kind of like the, I don't know, let's call him the equivalent of the Mishnah Berurah, like of a Chavetz Chaim for Baghdadi Jews. He lived in the more or less the same time actually, second half of the 20th century, and he wrote a sefer Ben Ish Chai, which is like a halachic, like let's call it like a Mishnah Berurah thought. It's different, but let's call it. In any case, he also wrote very extensively on the Gemarah, and he wrote two works actually, going through it twice, Ben Yoyada and Ben Ayahu, both on the Gemarah. So on the Ben Yoyada, so he sees something different, very different in this price I want to share with you. He says that good morning, you're welcome to come in. He says that Lila is a reference to, in Zohar, it's talked to this world, is can be compared to Lila as much as it's a dark and concealed place. Because for most of, like, to borrow terms, not exactly accurate, like most of the history of existence from Hashem's perspective, whatever those mean, so like, you know, there was just Hashem before the Bria, and after 6,000 years, there will be, like I guess Hashem will be fully manifested again in after this phase of existence, the earning, let's call it, phase of existence is over. There's the Gemarah in called Tzadi Zayin. It says that it's a machlokas Rav and Abaya, but anyways, the version that everyone knows and everyone quotes, like the Ramchal and Ben Ish Chai, etc., is there are 6,000 years to the world. The Gemarah says the first 2,000 years are called Tohu Vohu, chaotic, until Avram Avinu came on the scene. The second 2,000 years are called the 2,000 of Torah, Alpine Shal Torah, where I guess let's call it from Avram Avinu until basically codification of the Mishnah. The truth is, the Torah was revealed, and I mentioned between the first year, just by the by, I said the words like I'll hide behind the Chazon Ish. I said the words like that. And I was talking about the halacha being kavua, being set based on the standards and the realities that existed in those years of the Mishnah. So it's called the Alpine Shal Torah. I'm not getting back to that point. But in any case, in the final 2,000 years of the Alpine, 2,000 years of Mashiach. By the end of 2,000 years, the Messianic process must come to an end, and there must be a Mashiach having come, and the basic must be rebuilt, etc. That's a 6,000-year process. So the Ben Ish Chai understands that this reference to the Lila is talking about those 6,000 years when Hashem is concealed. I told you, I think I mentioned the word olam for universe. Those remember olamot on the word before the other day, from the word olam means to like a hit to hide away, because Hashem has concealed himself in this world, but Hashem wants to re-reveal himself. In the meantime, it's called nighttime because you don't see Hashem. You're forced sort of emunah that he's there, because you don't see him, you don't feel him directly, as you would, as he will.
10.
We'll be on line 10, but it was sort of off the page a little bit.
Gimel 10?
Yeah, Gimel on line 10. So it is. So he understands that the Lila is a reference to those 6,000 years, and that the Mishmarot are a reference to the Batei Mikdosh, because the Batei Mikdosh is a Mishmar, it's Shomer, it guards Jewish people and it provides them with Gemarah, and therefore he sees, in the words here, I'll say it outside for a second, he sees that it's talking about the Hashem cries over the two Batei Mikdosh that were destroyed, but for whatever reasons, which is alluded to in the Brisa, but not the third. So he reads like this: Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Shalosh Mishmoros Havi Alayla. In the course of, let's call it human history, for lack of a better term, almost 6,000 years, there'll be three different Mishmarot, three different watches, and three different Batei Mikdash. I'll call Mishmar, and on. So he sees this double lashon, this unnecessary Kol Mishmar Mishmar is supposed to say Al Kol Mishmar. And each Mishmar, he says both Mishmarot, meaning the first two, which were destroyed. Yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again Hashem is sitting, and he's in mourning, Ki'ilu. V'sho'eg Ka'ari, he roars like a lion, the same kind of roaring I mentioned yesterday, over the voice of the Malach, whatever it is. Shane'emar, as the pasuk says, Hashem in Moram Yish'og, Hashem roars from his high place. Mon Kodsho Yitin Kolo, he gives voice from his holy abode. Here, Sho'eg Yish'og, again a double lashon for the two repeating itself for the two Batei Mikdosh that he cries over on the Vehu. So that's what he sees in this brisa, which continues the similar davar. You can remember what went wrong, or what is siman that what someone defines or alluded to what's going on in those Batei Mikdash. So the first one, Chazal say that the Jewish people didn't study Torah or study Torah properly. So he sees in that they're comparable to a chamor no'er. Remember we said chamor is like chumrius, physicality, that they were sort of disconnected from their spiritual potential and roots, and instead much more like donkeys braying instead of people learning Torah. So that's the first mishmar, the first Beit Mishmar went wrong. And the second is kalavim tzakim, dogs barking. We mentioned that others saw kalavim tzakim, dogs barking, is a reference to the, even like a dog wouldn't wag its tongue in the time of the Tzitz Mitzrayim. So the Gemarah says that the reason the second Beit Mishmar was destroyed is because of Lashon Hara. So he says that's like Jewish Lashon Hara. So that he sees that the Ben Ish Chai sees in this that the dogs barking is like the Jews were like dogs wagging their tongues, saying Lashon Hara instead of speaking Torah as it should be. But by Shlishis, Tirach Yonok Mishtei Imo, no longer will there be something that intercedes between us and our connection to Hashem, like we discussed about the idea of Yonika of nursing on Thursday. That will have sort of direct contact with Hashem. The Isha Misaperis and Baal, the lines of communication will reopen up. The Hu should be, and the dialogue, whatever it means, that between us and Hashem will be reopened and will be appropriate and won't be destroyed again. Hence, there's only 2 and not 3 cryings out. So that's what the Ben Ish Chai sees this brisa. All, of course, in the context of the overlay, the halachic overlay that the Rosh saw and the Rav Gon saw, that this brisa is telling you when you should be getting up to tap into Hashem's mourning over the Beis Mikdash, to do some tikkun there and so on, tikkun chatzos, let's call it. So anyways, that's what the Ben Ish Chai says over here. Okay, Beseder. I like that very much. So we learned the Gemarah a few times to be able to skip down a little bit. The next part is halachic. We discussed these 3 watches. They're talking about the signs. Are they at the beginning, at the end of each, the beginning of each? That story. If you go down where we sort of left off properly to line 27, there's a little dot there, and we have another. It's gonna be another. Say it, Tanya. I don't think it's a price. I think it's just an Amoritic statement. So it says here in line 27, Amar Rav Yitzchak, I should say, Bar Shmuel Mishmei de Rav. Gimel Mishmar, yeah, it's the Rav, so it's Amar. Gimel Mishmar Havi Alayla. The line is divided to 3 watches. Again, Val Kol Mishmar Yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Vashoed Ka'ari, Hashem sits and cries out, roars like a lion. Va'omer, and what does he say? So it's interesting, this next phrase here doesn't exist in the early editions, let's call them, the early versions of the Gemarah. The early Rishonim don't have it like this. It seems that the way it's written here was inserted at some point by the Christian, let's call them editors, yeah? Christian editors. Because I mentioned to you in the very first day, or whatever, second day, that the Christian argument was that the proof that God had forsaken the Jews, remember they believe in the Old Testament, so-called Old Testament, so they say, yes, there was originally a covenant with the Jewish people, but because they didn't keep their half of the deal, like Hashem abandoned them. And the proof in the pudding is, look, He abandoned them, they have no Beis Mikdash and so on and so forth. So the Christian censor seems to have stuck it to them over here and put in the words, so it reads, Oy lavanim, woe to the children, that's the Jews, she'avonosehem, because of their avonos, because of their sins, hechrati es beisi, I destroyed my house, v'sarafti es echali, and I burnt down my sanctuary, v'gleisim levein umos ha'olam, and I scattered them, I exiled them amongst the nations of the world, that's right. So it seems that's not really the original Girsa. It seems the original Girsa just should read something like, I'm saying something like, because I don't remember off the top of my head, not because it's not known, something like, Oy shechravti, woe is to me that I had to destroy my house and burn my sanctuary, and I had to not not exile them, but the Higlesi Banai, I had to exile my children amongst the Umos. That was an interesting Girsa story there. In any case, that's what the Brachos says over here. So, the people who are speaking about the Gemarah over here focus on the repetitive. First of all, they see the simple three steps. They see there's a Hechravti as Basi, a house being destroyed, Srafti as Hechali, a sanctuary being burned, and a Gullus happening. So those three things are somehow parallel those three roars of the lion. That's what they're seeing as the parallelism here. The question is, what's the difference between Hechravti as Basi, I destroyed my house, and Srafti as Hechali, I burned down my sanctuary. It's the same thing twice. So they all point to one of two ideas which are really kind of the same idea, which is there's a Gemarah in Tainus that says there's sort of an upper and a lower Yerushalayim, or you can just think of it more simply, which may be the same exact thing, as we talked about in previous times or and other times, that there's like this spiritual roots that depend, like the physical world depends upon its spiritual, the chain of causality from up in Hashem. Then here there's like links in the chain in the spiritual world also. So either way you look at it, or maybe it's the same thing. Hashem first removes his Shekhinah from like the Batei Mikdoshim Shamala, the Batei Mikdoshim of heaven, whatever that means exactly. But those roots, like Hashem first up in the spiritual realms disconnects, and so they're leaving. Whenever that happened, I'm not exactly sure. It could well be, there's a Gemarah in Sanhedrin that says 40 years before the destruction, like say the year 30 of the Common Era, the Sanhedrin moved out of Lishkas Agazis. They didn't want to. They said there's too much murderers, and they couldn't try the cases. They'd rather just. If the Anshe Knesset Gadol are not sitting in Lishkas Agazis, the chamber of hewn stone, so then they can't execute death penalties, and no other Batei. Any Sanhedrin Gadol, any major Sanhedrin 23 could execute. But once the limud is that once the Sanhedrin Gadol, the main, I don't know what it is, capital S Sanhedrin, the Sanhedrin, Great Sanhedrin, picks up and moves out from the chamber of hewn stone, then there's no longer a death penalty. So they left them. It may well be, you can guess or not guess, I don't know, that they were sort of prescient in understanding that there was something being in exile happening already, and it was just a matter of time before it all would fall apart. Or maybe later. In either case, there's two steps here, and you can see the beginning of the Nefesh HaChaim. He also mentions that, it's the same idea right in the beginning, where he says, sort of paraphrasing him, he says those Goyim could have never destroyed Hashem's Batei Mikdosh if it wouldn't be that I first left it to them. So that's the same idea here. That first comes the Churban, Hechravti es Basi, I destroyed my house, means Hashem picked up and left, and then it's just it's just now a derelict shack, so to speak, without Hashem living there. It's just a matter of time before someone comes and just burns the place down. So there was two steps. There was the Hashem's leaving, that's the destruction of the temple in the spiritual sense. That's step one, and that was like the first sad step Hashem cries over. Then step two was actually destruction, which of course means that the Jews can't do what they're going to do in terms of affecting Kapara, bring Karbanos, which is also catastrophic for the cosmos. So that's the second thing he's crying about. And then third of all, worse yet, you could have a destroyed Batei Mikdosh, but the Jews be still lingering in Eretz Yisrael, whatever it is, or waiting. But no, they actually are left and kicked out of Eretz Yisrael and scattered amongst the Ummos Olam. So that's like a third catastrophic step in the story.
Rabbi, you're talking about all these metaphorical sayings. Are we talking about the first temple, second temple, or both temples?
Presumably we're talking about the third temple here now. Okay, because that's like
Won't my children,
so that was so before we were saying those three steps. The previous brisa, Ben Ish Chai was referring to like three different Batei Mikdosh. Those three mishmarot of the Laila are the three Batei Mikdosh of the 6,000 years. But now we're going back to Hashem directly crying. He's crying over a particular episode, which seems to be
what's he crying
the
about?
second Batei Mikdosh destruction.
Right.
So the first one, presumably, yeah. Presumably, that's a simple way of reading here. So you move it back on, but that's
sorry.
Okay. So so that's how they see the three steps here, and why the seemingly repetitive language of destroyed and burned down, the two separate things. The destruction of the Bais when Hashem leaves, the burning of the houses when the Romans come and burn the place down. Romans, I'll say. Okay, fine. Fine, good. So now I'm going to stop here we're going to go to a new brisa, so I guess if there's questions on anything we said in terms of this piece, which I think we've exhausted, then I'll take them now. Otherwise, we'll move on. So now we're picking up the brisa. It says Tanya, so we're on line 32. First one on line 32. A new brisa altogether. The connection ostensibly is we're talking about mourning over the Batei Mikdosh and not having a Batei Mikdosh that's being destroyed. So whatever that segue is, here it says, I'm Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, who was a student of Rabbi Akiva. So we're talking the year he probably didn't see the Churban, but he did see Beitar, the second quashing of the Jews in the second war, and destruction of the Bar Kokhba revolt, and that was in a really gut. When Jews were exiled, just to get historically straight, at the Churban, in the year 7, let's call it, Jews still lived in Judea. They just didn't have a Batei Mikdosh. When they rose up a second time, under Brachos in the year 132, so in 135, when they were destroyed by Hadrian, so Jews were forbidden to go to Jerusalem at all. It was renamed. It was called Eliyahu Capitolina after Jupiter, the god Jupiter, and however that works etymologically. And they were basically kicked out of Jews. Basically, were out of Judea. They were totally out of Jerusalem altogether, and largely.
That's the first.
Yeah. So this Rabbi Yossi living in that time, kind of seeing. I don't know if it's before or after. I can't say for sure, but I presume that it's after even the Koch revolt. And he is now wandering through the ruined Judea, which was basically wiped out. Nothing much left of Jews in Judea after this time. Rabbi Yossi said, Pam achas haisi mahalach b'derech. One time, I was walking along the way. V'nichnasti lachorva achas mechorvos Yerushalayim. And I entered into one of the ruins of Jerusalem, hispalel, so I could pray. His thinking was that although it's known, and we'll see the Gemarah speaks it out later on, that going into a churva, a ruin, is dangerous. These could crumble. Nevertheless, he assumed that the schus of praying would protect him. Ba Eliyahu zechur latov. Eliyahu Hanavi, who shows up from time to time, he shows up here. It says here zechur latov, which means he should be remembered for the good. Okay, so it doesn't always say that about Eliyahu, but it never says that about anybody else. This is Eliyahu's epithet. Zechur latov is an Eliyahu thing, okay, but it's not connected to his name, like inseparably connected. But anyways, that's the reference here. Eliyahu zechur latov, he should remember for the good. He's going to be a harbinger, a bringer of the Mashiach for Messianic time, so that's why he's zechur latov. V'shamar li al Pesach, and Rashi understands shamar means he waited. Brings proofs. So he waited for me at the entrance of the Churban. The words v'himtili probably taken out. Ad shesiyamti tefilasi, until I finished my prayer. La'achar shesiyamti. Once Rabbi Yossi says, once I finished praying tefilasi, my prayer, amarli. Then Eliyahu said to me, Shalom alecha Rebbe. Greetings to you, my master. Rabbi Yossi was Rabbi Yossi. And now I'm speculating here. Total speculation here. But it's I guess, this is Joel Padowitz guessing. I didn't see anyone inside. But I bet people do talk about this for reasons you'll see why later on. I guess it wasn't clear, or Eliyahu wanted to see if Rabbi Yossi knew who he was and recognized something special about him. Why am I saying that? Because there's a din that you can't greet your Rebbe in a normal way. Shalom Aleichem is not allowed. That creates the Shechina Shnistalek. The Shechina abandons the Jews if people don't give proper kavod to their Rebbeim. And therefore, it's brought down, you have to greet your Rebbe differently than you greet a regular person. So he says, Shalom Aleichem Rebbe. So that's Eliyahu establishing that he's recognizing Rabbi Yossi as a Rebbe, because I guess everyone would, right? Because he's Rabbi Yossi. It's a big shot. But V'amarti lo, like Rabbi Yossi kind of doesn't fall for it, if you know what I mean? And he says, Shalom Alecha Rebbe Umori. So he responded back, like one-ups that by saying, greetings to you, my master, Rebbe, Umori, and my teacher. So therefore, like the pecking order is established that Rabbi Yossi is saying, I recognize that I'm just Rabbi Yossi, and you are Eliyahu Navi, and you're my teacher. So with that, all those words that were just bracketed in were my inserts, like by educated guess, but not by source. Okay? So Va'amar li, so now, look, the table turns. He says, Eliyahu Navi says to Rabbi Yossi, Bani, my son. You see, he went from being Rebbe, once Rabbi Yossi says, I know exactly who you are. Then he says, okay, my son. So he turns to being a son now. Bani, not Rebbe, but Bani, my son. Mipnei ma nichnas l'chorva zu. Now, exactly why did you go inside this chorva? You know very well it's dangerous, right? Those are all my words inserted. You have to. I'm going to do with these stories like this. I'm going to do a bit of, I don't call it poetic license, but I want to. The Shas is very tight, very concise text, and if it's a story, and we're used to hearing stories as we do, I think it. And there's a parish running anyways, an intention. I think it is more true to its intention by saying it kilo as a story and putting the words I'm putting in than the literal translations. I hope you have you have the words in front of you and you'll see where I'm sticking things in. But I'm working in a parish, and also I think, but we speak the language that we speak, so I want to speak it like we should speak it. So he says, why did you go, Rabbi Yossi? Why did my son? Why did you go into this chorva? You know better than that. You shouldn't be going because it's dangerous. I said, listen, I had to pray, and I figured the prayer would protect me. Vamar li. So Eliyahu says, he's narrating first person. So Rabbi Yossi says, Eliyahu said to me, no, that was the wrong move. What you should have done is stand on the path from the outside and prayed outside the chorva where it's not dangerous. I said to him back, I was afraid people would wander by and disturb me while I'm davening. So I figured I'd rather be left in peace and be able to concentrate inside the chorva. Which is a din. The din is, Allah is, you're supposed to be in a place where people won't disturb you. So I figured I'd go just inside it. And again, the schus of that would protect me. What you should have done, says Eliyahu, is you should have prayed outside and just made an abbreviated prayer. This tefillah katsara over here, Rashi understands, is referring to the Havinenu prayer. We'll see when we get to. There are different versions of Kitzur. There's different levels of how abbreviated a prayer can be. The Havinenu prayer basically is the first prayer, the first three and the last three, and then like one single prayer that's smushed together that contains all of the 13 middle ones. So anyways, you should have prayed that prayer. We'll get back to Havinenu eventually, B'ez Hashem. But say you should have just prayed quickly, and that way you would not have the fear of people bothering you, and you could stay outside the chorva.
I wouldn't have had to wait for you so long.
Perhaps. But also, Shah, at that moment, says Rabbi Yossi, Lamadati mimenu shlosha devarim. I learned three things from him. First of all, Lamadati, I learned number one, she'ein nechnasin l'chorva. It's not right to go into a chorva, it's dangerous, stay out of ruins. Number two, the Lamadati, she'mispalim b'derech. I learned it's actually mutter in such a situation to pray on the sidewalk, even though people are going to walk past and bother you. The Lamadati, and third of all, I learned, she'mispal b'derech. If you're praying there on the sidewalk where people could pass by you, so then, mispal tefillah katsara. You should pray an abbreviated prayer so that, it's appropriate to pray abbreviated prayer and at least get it done without being disturbed, than a long one, which is a little, is likely to get liable to be disturbed. Fine. Period. Let me pause there for a second because there's a lot going on. So, true, there's only one thing going on, though. I won't pause much. I'll just say over. The story seems like a story and the only real halachic significance seems to be the last 3 points. The 3 things you learn is that about how you pray. It's interesting that we'll come back to what this is speaking about in terms of metaphorical language, but there's something embedded here which is fascinating. There's a sugya in Bava Kama, in Ein Gimel on the base. There's a din called Toch Kedei Dibur, which means that there's a certain window of time after you say something to be able to recant and say, I didn't mean that, and say something else instead. Like if you make a bracha, you're eating an apple, and you say, on the apple you say, Brei Pri Ha'adama, you won't be yotzi, because it didn't come, actually that's a terrible example. You're eating a carrot, and you say, Brei Priya Eitz, so you won't be yotzi, because it didn't grow on a tree, but Toch Kedei Dibur, within a very small window of time, you're able to say, Brei Pri Ha'adama, and correct, retract what you say and correct it. There's such a thing like that. Yeah?
I think the actual time is from 11:30.
Wow, one second. We're not allowed to comment. And we'll take questions. So, there's a big machlokas, there's a machlokas for Shonim, it goes all the way down to machlokas in the Ber Heitev and the Mishabura, which is like the bitter end of what to do. How long is that gap? Anyways, get myself for a second, I want to take a step back. So, that exists throughout Kol Torah Kula, this idea of Toch Kedei Dibur, the ability to restate what you said. Either according to Tosfos, it's like a din d'Rabbanan, they allowed you to retake what you said, which is true, like relevant, like even in a court, you could like restate what you said. According to the Ran, it's that there's an umdina that people don't really machlit. They don't like resolve what they mean till after like a few seconds after they say it. In any case, you're able. The din for sure is if you have a chasim on the wrong bracha, you say the wrong thing or something, you can change what you said within toch kedei dibur, within a small amount of time, and then you can. It's like you're okay. If you waited too long, then you've missed it. You have to now say another bracha or start again or whatever the case may be. That applies across the board. Kol tzor. In any case, there's a machlokas. Like I said, if it's 3 words or 4 words, it's clear. It's based on how long it takes to greet your Rebbe, which is more than Shalom Alecha. So some understand that Shalom Alecha Rebbe Umori, my teacher, my master, and some say it's just Shalom Alecha Rebbe, 3 words. That's a machlokas to the end. Like I told you, Mishabur Behita, so it's like a machlokas to the end. In any case, so some point to this Gemarah over here as a proof or non-proof for that discussion, because there's so someone. If you look, there are other sources, but if you look at this Gemarah over here, so Shalom Alecha Rebbe is what Eliyahu Navi said to establish. So then it's not clear if the one upsmanship is just one upsmanship, but really that was sufficient and it's 3 words, or no, the Sugi is showing you the full proper greeting is all 4 words. Shalom Alecha Rebbe Umori. You tend to see the halacha possible 4 words, like you said, Shalom Alecha Rebbe Umori. But I guess, anyway, that's so. My point was that even in the sort of the chit chat of the story over here, with the story part of the story, there is halachic significance, perhaps, what you see. Yes. Okay, fine. So now the Brisa continues on. So Rabbi Yosef said, I learned 3 things. So he listed 3 things. So now Eliyahu comes back to him and says, listen, Amli Bani, he said to me, my son, Ma kol shamat b'chor v'zu, what sound did you hear in this churva, in this ruin? Amarti lo. So I said to him, Shamati baskol. I heard a baskol. This is a funny thing. A baskol literally means the daughter of a voice, whatever that's supposed to mean. It's a reference as somehow hearing. It's not nevuah. It's a step down from nevuah. It couldn't be a step down from Ruach HaKodesh, which is like a step down from nevuah. Let's call it an echo, because that is how some describe it. As an echo of a nevuah. Nevuah is not around with us anymore, not in time with Yossi. There's no nevuah, and perhaps no ruach. There could be ruach hakodesh, but he perhaps didn't have it. If that's the shot here. In any case, he heard just like an echo of what would have been a nevuah had there been nevuah or had he been ready for it, whatever the story is. And that baskol, what did it sound like? It sounded like a voice. I don't know yet. The sound of shemenehemes kayona, like a dove. Probably a pigeon for this, maybe anyway, it sounds more romantic if it's a dove. A dove cooing. So I heard the sound of a dove cooing, Vomeres, and it was saying, Oy levanim shavonoseim hechravti esbesi, woe to the children that because of their sins I had to destroy my house. It's the same, these words are the same words you saw before, of course, but it's probably the same Christian editing as what was before. But either way, the point is for our purposes is that the language parallels, except of course, a moment ago the voice Hashem was using was the voice of a lion, and now we've got a voice of a dove, right?
Yeah, the opposite.
Something's changed here, exactly right. So I've discussed what that symbol is saying. In any case, the dove cooing was saying, "Woe oy levanim shavonoseim hechrafti es beisi v'srafti sechali v'gleisil levein ha'umos." Almost exactly the same words. Yeah, word ha'olam is missing. I don't know why. So. Va'amarli. So Eliyahu Navi said to me, Rabbi Yossi, Chayecha v'chay roshecha. That's just like an idiom, which means like you bet your life, something like that, Lo shazu bilvad omeres kach. It's not just now. You didn't have to just hear it this moment. That's not a unique moment you tapped into. El b'chol yom v'yom. Every day, shalosh pamim, 3 times omeres kach. That's exactly what Hashem says. Lo zu bilvad. Not just 3 times a day. Ela b'shash Yisrael nechnas l'batei knesses l'batei midrashos. Every time the Jews go into their knesses, that's where they pray, batei midrashos, where they learn Torah. They weren't the same place, they really. Va'onim, and they say out loud, Yehei Shmei Hagadol Mevorach. That's Yehei Shmei Rabbah of our Kaddish. Fascinating question why it's in Hebrew, not in Aramaic here. We'll come back to that. But anyways, it means Yehei Shmei Rabbah. When the Jews say Yehei Shmei Rabbah, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Minanei Rosho, Hashem like shakes his head. Hashub Shad here, well, I don't know. Most people I saw, they understand Minanei means this, like shakes his head as in
I don't
what a
believe you.
shame, what a loss, something like that kind of. Although other times you'll see Menanea can mean like this isn't like I agree with you, but here it seems most that I saw seem to say is shaking his head like no. Yeah. So Hashem shakes his head, va'omer, and he says, "Ashrei hamelech shemakalsin also beveiso." Like, fortunate is the king that about whom they praise like this in his house. That would be the Batei Mikdosh. But malo la'av. But what has a father got? Notice he switched from being a melech to being av. Malo la'av shehigla es banav, that he had to exile his children. V'oy lahem lavanim, and woe to the children shegalu mal shulchan abiyim, that had to be exiled from their father's table. End of the brisa. That's the Rabbi Yossi. So there's a lot going on here. Which way? What do I want to start first? Let's do the Yonah thing first. That's it. Simple and interesting. It's not as complex as the other points here. So we see that Hashem at night roars out 3 times like a lion. In the day, 3 times. Presumably, I say presumably, some understand it that way. It's a 3 tefillos, Shabbos and Gemarah, but let's like that. That Hashem is doing the same exact cry in terms of content. Right? The content is still, what a shame that we had to destroy the Batei Mikdoshim, burn it down, and exile the Jews. But so the words are the same, but the context, the framing of it is very different. It's, instead of the tone being the tone of a lion, we said it's one of Gemarah, we said it, instilling fear. What are you going to do about it? Now we are talking about something else. We're talking about a dove. So what do you suppose a dove is symbolic of in Jewish thinking? You can think about it. Peace. So I don't know where that comes from exactly. I think it might be a UN. I don't know where that comes from. Do you know where that comes from? The dove being symbolic of peace? I don't think it's rabbinic literature.
Doesn't the dove that's the smell?
It's definitely a modern symbol, the olive branch.
From Noah.
Yeah, where's peace there?
Noah.
Where's peace?
Does it offer
Peace there?
peace?
The sign of peace have to be numbers.
What's
It
happening?
says there? It says peace there? I don't know where that comes from. I'm not attacking, I'm curious. I don't know. I don't know where that peace
There's a
is.
place
show
that
them
talks
the
about
streets.
Yonah and peace.
To
Yeah.
show the
It was
flood.
land.
Well,
Right.
Yonah
Yonah is the
Noah,
Jewish
like
people
lots of
anyway.
Noah,
Yonah
right?
is the Jewish people too.
Yeah, so Yonah, yes, exactly. So I don't know about the peace thing. I think the peace thing is Christological or later for all I know. I don't know. I stand to be corrected. But I don't think the reference there, the image of a dove with its like a olive branch in its mouth is surely from the story of Yonah. But there it wasn't piecing, whatever.
No, but that's showing peace. It's showing the flood's over.
I don't know. So let's like wipe our minds clean of that, because unless you can justify it, I don't know if it's true. But what was? If you remember, there was another bird sent out first.
Raven.
It was a raven. What happened to that raven?
Bye-bye.
It just left. But the dove stuck around waiting for its mate. So the symbol of a dove, and doves like pair for life, and it's symbolic of like fidelity. That's right. Fidelity. That's right. There's this fidelity idea. And although, of course, there are many other monogamous birds, whatever, out there, but the dove in other places is a reference to Jewish people. We'll actually see some more like that, but the dove is a reference to the Jewish people also. So the being cooing like a dove here, like a Yonah, is suggesting, so to speak, this idea that the same way despite the destruction of the flood that the dove had to watch, he stuck around waiting for his partner to be able to come back and out. So the same idea. Hashem is, so to speak, holding out that, I don't know if it's peace, but certainly he's holding out that olive branch, if you will, either yes or no, being a reference to peace, but saying like I'm waiting, like the destruction, the end will come, you'll be able to get out, and I'm waiting for you. And that's the beckoning. So that at night it's, as someone said, I like that, it wasn't mine, but someone said like it instills, when a lion roars it instills fear, and that was, we saw the halacha, it's every year Shemayim has to be meitzar and doeg, you should be afraid. What are you going to do about it? That's a lion saying this is serious business. But now it's something else. Now there's no fear here. Now it's a term of endearment. It's love. It's like Hashem is crying, saying, "Look, because of you, we've been forced to separate. But just please come back. I'm waiting for you, like a dove. I'm waiting for you. I'm here." And it's like the shidduch is like I'm echoing the Jewish people in like a Yonah, waiting for them to come back. And that's the beckoning to do tshuva and return to me. That's simple here. And the nighttime, that is a time for crying out to Hashem. We saw those halachas. The daytime, not. Right, we don't say in the daytime. The daytime, it's still a moment of tshuva. But Hashem is waiting for us to come back to Him. And that's the dove beckoning back. Yeah.
It seems like whoever
time that I see that Eliyahu Navi appears is because it has something to do with the end days.
Right, that's for sure true. Eliyahu, he is exactly right. So we have to come back, but somehow we're going to see what Eliyahu is doing in the story over here.
Right.
It doesn't seem to fit. Good,
Right.
100%. But because the first part of the story was just the discussion that they had about praying in the ruin, which seems to be just a halakhic discussion. Right. Later on, Eliyahu brings out the point that, oh, by the way, Hashem is beckoning you to come back, which would, of course, be tied into Eliyahu and why he would come here. Good. So that's the dove first line story. Now, let's go back up to the beginning again. So the first question I saw, which I really liked, the Kutzker Rebbe. So he said, listen, if Eliyahu Navi, see, we're hitting all the bases here. We got anyway. So the Kutzker Rebbe, so he says a great line, as he always does. He says, if Eliyahu Navi was concerned for Rabbi Yossi's safety and say, this is dangerous, what are you doing? So why did he appear a second before and say, don't go in there, it's dangerous? Why did he wait till after it came out? So this is great. So the Kutzker says, it's because it's always that way. Hashem gives a person his bechira, and then after he takes him to test, says, and why did, now over the discussion, why in the world did you do what you just did? And I guess you can defend yourself. But Hashem gives a person enough space, doesn't save him from mistakes like that normally. And that's the normal course of events. A person's, can be expected to make his own decision and have to justify his own decisions. Normally. We do say Hashem is magain, which would mean preempts us. He saves us also, but normal Bechira talk is people who do Bechira and then have to answer the consequences. So the Kutzker points that out over here. In any case, so in the story, the first part of the story here, so I mentioned already a few times in passing the Ein Yaakov. The Ein Yaakov is an interesting book. I think it might be the first time a Jewish book was written, and no, I don't know. Take that back. Doesn't matter. Forget that sentence. The Ein Yaakov is his name is Ibn Chaviv. Yaakov Ibn Chaviv. He was like a very early Achron, like living like the late 1400s. I think the book was published in the early 1500s, from the first of the books. Published at all when the printing press came out in the late 1400s. And that was a divided line between Achron and Rishonim, but in any case, he's an Achron. He's an early Achron. So he wrote a anthology of all the Gemarah in Shas, and it's become like a standard on shelves. I think in many circles it became like a very standard source of learning. Like I remember when I lived in Shari Chesed, the old timers used to have a shir in Yaakov every afternoon before mincha time. Like they're probably doing that since whenever, forever. And in any case, so the Ein Yaakov, he wrote this compendium, this anthology of all of the Gemarah, and collected different mafarshim on it and printed with his own thinking in a. He has the Ein Yaakov, and then he also has his own thing called Hakosev, which means the author, I guess, something like that. So there's a commentary on the Ein Yaakov called Hakosev, the author, which is him, good old Rabbi Yaakov Ibn Chaviv, himself writing his thoughts on the interpretations of the Gemarah. So he says on this, a beautiful, beautiful pshat. This is how he reads it. So I told you Rabbi Yossi lived in the wake of the Churban itself. And the Jews at that time were really expecting Mashiach to be coming any time. That's why, at least some, the Rambam says Rabbi Akiva, we'll leave it to that, we have that source, backed, at least some Rebbeim, like Rabbi Akiva, backed Bar Kochba in his Rabbal, because they really thought Bar Kochba, his name actually wasn't that original, I forgot his original name. I don't think that was his original name either. I think it was Bar Kosba or something like that was his original name. Something like that. Whatever it was, Shimon, it was his first name. I think his name is Bar Kosba or something, I don't remember his original name. He got to change his name from Kosba or something to Kochba, which means like the son of a star, because their psukim, the blessings that Yaakov gave to Judah, that this referencing like a star coming, and this was the Mashiach. They thought he was like the son of a star. He was the Mashiach coming to redeem them and fight the wars to bring the Beis Hamikdash back. Afterwards, after destruction, so he got a new name. He actually turned bad in the end. He became, I don't get into the story now so much, but Bar Kochba at the end became like really paranoid and convinced that his own people and the Rabbanim were undermining him and like planning against him. Really became paranoid, and he had I forgot who killed, but someone killed, like a rabbi killed, and it all fell apart after that. In any case, after it fell apart, and there's something he wasn't the Mashiach clearly, and everything fell apart. So they renamed him, I guess, like Bar Koziva, which means like false, like false hope, something like that, like a son of deceit, something like that. So the point is, he got, I don't know what his original name was, but he became changed to Bar Kochva when he was like the son of a starborn, and later on Bar Koziva, the son of, of a falsity, of a lie. In any case, so Rabbi Yossi living in this time, and now the Jews are really... Kozba's original name, Kozba? So there you go, yeah. So now the Jews are really panicked. Like, it seems like they had thought the rebuilding of the Beit Shlish would happen imminently, and now it's clearly not happening imminently because the Jews had been decimated. It was catastrophic after the second war. So he understands this is what happens. One time I was going along the way, this palel, and I decided to enter in, like conceptually enter in, to pray over the Churban of Yerushalayim. I wanted to engage Hashem and say, like, Ad Kan, make the Gullus come to an end and rebuild it. And I began to enter such a prayer like that. So notice, he's reading it, there's nothing physical happening necessarily. I don't know, it could have been happening in his own basement. It was not on the street of Jerusalem somewhere, but he was, wherever he was going, or wherever he decided to pray over Yerushalayim, the Churban. And in that prayer, that sort of elevated prayer that you'll see would be, Eliyahu Navi came to him, like as he does in dreams to people and so on. Sharmali Ava Pesach, he waited for me at the beginning of that prayer, till the very end of my prayer, Tfilasi. Lachash Siyamti, when I finished Tfilasi, my prayer over the Churban, Amar Li Shalom Lecha Rebbe, Amar Tila Shalom Lecha Rebbe Mori, Amar Li B'ni. So then Eliyahu said, listen, why have you gone to delve so deeply into the Churban Beis HaMikdash? Like, why are you now sort of like plumbing the depths of the Odyssey, like Hashem's justice, and why is Hashem doing this? Like, what led you to this? Listen, I felt I needed to pray over it because we look like we're in dire straits now. Marli, you did the wrong thing. You should be praying over the Churban. The Churban is the Churban, and that's what's going to stay for the time being. But you shouldn't have prayed about the thing to be rebuilt. You should be praying that the Jews should, survive the path to get to Beit Shlishi. That's what you should be praying about. But Martilo, he said, I can't. I'm afraid of that. Misyara, I was afraid. How you said? Shema yafsiku bi ovei drachim. I was afraid that we wouldn't get there because ovei drachim, the people that we would meet along the way on our travels through history, would do us in. This is a good thing to be afraid of because the Romans tuck ahead just to come out and dump them in. Va'amar li haylach alas pal tefillah katzara. So he said, no. You shouldn't delve in such things. You should make a short prayer. So remember, Eliyahu Navi says you should be praying for the way. Rabbi Yossi says I was afraid, so that's the talk we should be praying for. And you shouldn't delve so deeply into this, like the justice and what's going to be and want to know when Mashiach is going to come. Don't plumb the depths so deeply. Make a brief prayer and get on with things. That's how he reads that's the story over here, which is remarkable. And Boso Shah, so then from that event, from that prayer that I once had where Eliyahu Navi came to me, I learned three things. First of all, I learned, first of all, it's not proper to inquire over like the justice and the meaning and the long-term ramifications of the Churban. That's not right. That's Hashem knows what he's doing, but it's not our job. What we should be praying for, I learned, is that we should survive the exile along the way. I learned that, as we're praying for the welfare of the Jews to survive this, mispal tefillah katzara, one shouldn't spend, it is a heavy duty, but one should make a concise, brief prayer, heartfelt but concise prayer, that we should survive it and then get on with things. That's how he reads this, the story of the Bryce here, which I think is remarkable.
That would probably apply to every tragedy.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly right, 100%. So again, you see that the opening themes of the Shas are the very first things we're establishing are the nature of the Mishnah to the relation to the Mishnah and the Tanakh we had at the beginning, and now we've gone away right into the idea of the feeling the anguish of the Beis HaMikdash, and now we're talking about how to deal with this predicament. Remember, the Jews, I guess when this is written, it's the year 500, but we're deep into the Galus already. But of course, the Jews were suffering throughout. And you asked that question, which I liked so much, I'm just repeating what we said the other day. But Eliyahu Mishul noticed, I'm just repeating, we said this before, that halacha base of Sif Aleph of Orach Chaim, it said you should be you should get up at night to pray over the Churban and the destroyed Batei Mikdosh and also the Galus. But then the next line said, and it's proper for every Yirei Shemayim to be Meitzar and Doeg, to feel pain and distress, worry over the Churban. So he asked, well, what about the Galus? So I answered the next day, because every Jew feels the suffering of the Galus. You don't have to be a Yirei Shemayim to feel that, because they're suffering. They're being run, look around. And this is about this period we're living in history is about as good as it's been for the Jews, as pretty much, loosely speaking, no Jews being persecuted. That's getting up to an upswing in case you didn't notice. But it's been worse. In any case, so here, Hakosev, the Yaakov Mechaviv, is seeing that we're talking about how to deal with that overwhelming issue that's facing Jews throughout their whole history of learning Torah. Yeah. Good. So now we go back to the story of the Yonah. So Eliyahu Navi asks, that's the end of Hakosev, I think, but the Eliyahu Navi asks what you heard. So he says, I heard a Yonah cooing, like we said before. But again, that's telling you that Hashem's reason for destruction is something that is not because he's divorced us and he's given up on us, chas v'chalila, as you might be afraid if you're living in the 2nd century of the Common Era, hearing the Christians saying that kind of stuff. Rather, no, Hashem is like waiting for us like a dove, saying, please come back, I want you to come back. I'm sitting here waiting, and meantime I'm miserable. So now it says, V'amarti lo shamati ba'askol menehem skayona. I heard the dove cooing. V'amarti. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So Rabbi Yossi says, like, kind of quote, I heard a baskol murmuring like a Yonah, v'ameris, and it was saying, Oy levanim, or even if it's changed the girsa, Oy shechrafti es beis v'israfti sechali. Woe is to me, says Hashem, that I had to destroy my house, burn down the sanctuary, and exile my children, which he didn't want to do, and I wish they'd come back. Va'amar li, so he says, Hayecha v'chai v'shecha, you better believe that Hashem, that's Hashem's attitude. Hashem's always like that, wishing we'd come back. Lo sha'azu levad, it wasn't a one-off thing. Omer kach, ela b'chol yom v'yom, every day, it's supposed to every night, where it's like a line, but every day, sholosh pamin, 3 times a day, let's say mincha shachas mincha marav, but only b'shabbat, let's say that. He is Omer's kach. He's saying, please come back, come back, come back. Lo zu bilvad, not just 3 times a day, but really every time. B'shash yisrael nechanas b'batei knesses, b'batei midrashos, v'on yehei shmei rabba. Whenever they say yehei shmei hagadol v'vorach, Hashem shakes his head and says, oh gosh, Ashrei hamelech shmekalson oso b'beiso kach. It was great when I was the king and I had a Batei Mikdosh. But now I'm Malul Av. Now I'm not a king anymore. So he went from Melech to Av. I'm not a king anymore. I'm a father. And without my children are gone. What have I got? I got nothing. Shegleises Banav. I was forced to chase my sons away, my children away. Voilahem, but they have even worse yet. Levanim Shegalu Ma'al Shulchan Avim. They're not no longer in their father's house, and they're their father's table. The Batei Mikdosh is compared to Hashem's table many times. Actually, such a lashon we talk about. Karbanos, we say it's Mishulchan Gavoa Kazachi. The Jews are eating straight from Hashem's table, whatever the context of that is. But we looked at it sort of really having this close relationship with Hashem, which now is no longer possible. So that's that. So you see Hashem has these 2 relationships: the Melech relationship, now the Av relationship, and the Av just wants his kids to come back. In the last few moments, there's not enough time, I don't think. Well, let me say this. It seems, if you did notice, that all our prayers are in Hebrew. That's from Anshe Knesset Gedolah. They made the prayers in Hebrew. It seems that very few prayers were in Aramaic. Kaddish, most notable among them. And it seems that it wasn't always that way. It seems that from this Gemarah here, and that's what it also says right over here, originally the Kaddish prayer was in Hebrew. They didn't say Yehei Shmei Rabbah, they said Yehei Shmei Hagadol V'vorach. But the lingua franca, the common man's language of the Jews, as time passed, was largely Aramaic or Greek, to be honest. But in any case, simple Jews were Greek speakers; they were Aramaic speakers because Aramaic persisted, and so since many spoke Aramaic and not speaking. Remember, the Jews of Israel, by the time the Gemarah is written, are shifted over largely to being Jews of Babel, and the Jews are living in Babylonia. And that's where the heart of Jewish life continued to like the year 1038. So or at some point after writing this Brisa, which is, let's say, I don't know when, 2nd or 4th, 5th century, when they were saying it in Hebrew, they changed it to be in Aramaic because people would understand the prayer. And that's what we have today. Our Kaddish is in Aramaic because that was the Aramaic was, so every mourner gets up to pray, he wants to understand what he's saying and so on and so forth. And ironically, Aramaic was more understandable to him. We haven't switched back because we're super duper conservative people, in case you didn't notice. But it, so to speak, the same logic. I'm not advocating this, obviously. I'm just saying it's like the same logic we say today. We sort of say it in English, if you know what I mean, so people understand that this was the English. Our English was the Aramaic, and it changed for that reason. Just never changed back. So ironically, it's very ironic that the few prayers that are meant to be understood by every man are in Aramaic today, which are the ones that none of us understand because they're so unfamiliar to us. But that's how I am.
Very ironic.
Yeah, so very funny, right? So yes, okay. So let you take it up with your local Orthodox rabbi. I think it's too late. We're not changing it anymore. Sorry. But anyways, so there is a bit to be said about this Yehesh, what Yehesh may Rabbah means, and why that would be especially powerful to Hashem. But that would just save tomorrow for the first few minutes before we move on to the Gemarah.